and work with teams as you prepare for your final application in May. Our primary support over the next couple months is helping you prepare your live pitch, which 20 minutes I know is a lot, and I'm sure many of you are thinking about that and have been thinking about how to get started on that. So we're hoping to cover that today and just really help walk you through that. And after today's session, you'll get some more information from me over email, which then will lead into some small group sessions that we'll be working with you in March and May to just prepare that 20-minute pitch. So I have a team here with me at UACI. I've got Casey Carrillo, who is our assistant director, who's on the call today as well, and you'll get to meet her a little bit more in those small groups, as well as Susan Garber, who is our subject matter expert at UACI in marketing strategies, and she works a lot on branding and general communications, and we're just really thrilled to have her. She has a wonderful background and a lot of long-term knowledge to offer all of you. I wanted to remind you again that there is a newsletter that is issued monthly by the group at, you should see Jennifer Weigel, Amanda Morton, send out a monthly newsletter that has all the upcoming events. If you are not getting that, please let me know and we'll make sure that you get on that list, or if you have a new team member. So with that, Susan, I think we can turn it over to you and let you get started.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you to everybody who's here. It's great to see people from all over the country and beyond. And it's an exciting time for you because you, of course, are winners already, having come through the first phase of this competition. So big congratulations to everybody. The next phase is where you really get to shine with your plans and your commitments, and we're going to talk about that a bit today. For some of you, you may be more experienced. You may have done, a number of these sorts of competitions or done some grants. So I hope today is a bit of a refresher, and maybe you'll pick up a few tips here and there. For those of you who are new to the process, feel free to ask questions as we go along, and hopefully we'll be able to help you get started and know how to build your presentations. In phase two, the main thing you want to do, two things really, is to start by reminding the judges why you were selected as a finalist and why you should go forward. So it's a chance to build on the enthusiasm that the judges already have, the competition has for your project. One thing to keep in mind is that you may not have the same reviewers in phase two as you had in phase one. So some of the judges may be hearing your story for the first time. And so it's a chance for you to reintroduce and to get a new group of people excited about your projects. So as Amanda said, we're going to cover some key areas for your live pitch. And your live pitch, of course, is 20 minutes. It can include up to a 3-minute video. Some of what we're going to talk to today, even though we're not specifically addressing your written report, some of what we're talking about, you may be able to also apply to your written report. That report gives you the opportunity to give much more in-depth information to support your project, more focus on your support, your figures, the meaningful graphs and images that you will use to illustrate what your proposal is all about. The live pitch gives you the chance to really bring it all to life and to express the excitement that you have for what you've already done in phase one, and to let the judges fall in love with what you're proposing to do in the next phase as well. And by the way, if you have any comments or questions, if you want to drop them in the chat, and Amanda, you can let me know, or we can answer everything at the end. So the recap that the judges are asking for in your presentation of phase one is where you really start. How was the phase one funding used? how have you met the stated goals from phase 1? And then to go on to demonstrate how much more you can accomplish in phase 2. So those are the basic principles of your live pitch, and we'll come back to this a couple times as we talk about how to build your content. One thing that is often helpful for the judges is if you can demonstrate how you've utilized all the resources and support that the challenge has offered you. You know, there have been a lot of seminars and webinars. You have your power connectors, you have your communications support as well. And it's great to talk about how you have used those resources along with how you have used the funds that were provided. So the live pitch itself, the good news is you have 20 minutes to tell your story and convince the judges about the validity and the need for what you're proposing. Some people say 20 minutes is the good news. Some people say it's the scary news also, because 20 minutes is actually a long time. I think of it in terms of a 30-minute sitcom that you might sit down to watch and think about everything that happens in that one program. It's about the same length because a 30-minute sitcom has about 20 to 22 minutes of content in it, which is about what you're being asked to fill also. So there's a lot that goes on in that 20 minutes. You know, you set the stage. In the sitcom, a story is introduced. There's usually some conflict going on. There may be several storylines in the same program. Things start to happen, characters are developed, characters react to what's going on in that 22 minutes, and ultimately the story is resolved. And so if you just think in your heads about everything that happens when you're sitting there on the couch watching a 20-minute show, a 30-minute show, remember that you need to fill all that time and keep the energy up for the full 20 minutes as well. And it's actually a bit of an outline of how you can approach putting your presentation together, setting the stage, giving the information, talking about how the problems that you're addressing are going to be resolved. So it's important to keep everything interesting, very engaging, keep the energy up through your 20 minutes. And you may decide to have one person doing it, you may have two, you may have more, but however you do it, with the number of people that you plan to use, make sure everyone is sort of well rehearsed and they can keep the story building and then progressing to the conclusion that you want, which is to get additional funding for your project. So we're going to break down this presentation into two sections, starting with the content itself. And this is really the content that the judges have said that they're going to be looking for. And then a bit of a discussion about the presentation style, how you can use different tools and approaches to make it engaging as you go through. Getting started, sometimes that's the hardest part. It usually is for me. Everybody has jobs and lives and families and other activities that they're involved in. So sometimes just finding those few quiet moments to sit down and start to put the presentation together can be a big first step. I like to recommend starting with doing a brief for both the presentation and for the video. And the brief is really an outline of the main points that you're going to be covered. It's really great to get the whole group involved with writing that brief, or at least reviewing the brief, so that you have early consensus in the process about what will be included and what the approach will be. It's also important at this stage to determine what your tone and style will be. And you want this to be something that's fitting for you as a group and for your project, and of course for the environment of this particular challenge. But do you want the presentation to be fun, serious, scientific? What is your approach going to be? How does the video fit into that? Oftentimes people will have the bulk of the presentation be a little more straightforward and use the video to be sort of the more fun, lighthearted section. But there should be some consistency that everybody agrees is the best way to go on, to go forward with the presentation. So you want to make sure that you're not missing anything that the judges have asked for. Sometimes redos can be costly in terms of time and money. We were just working with a team for a different challenge that only had 2 people involved with putting the whole presentation, including a video, together. And when it was finished, they sent it to the rest of the team. And the rest of the team said, but you forgot this and this and this, really important facts. They had to go back and redo the whole presentation and pay to have another video made. So just a good point to remember is to make sure everybody is hearing what you have put together. It can also be really helpful to have objective outside eyes looking at your presentation along the way, and we will be some of those objective eyes for you. And Amanda's going to talk about that a little bit later. But there may be other people who are just in your realm of work who can just make sure that you're coming across very clearly and that the key points are being made. And it's just a good second check or third check to make sure that you're being successful in your presentation. Again, getting started when sometimes it's hard to find the time. For me, sitting in front of a blank computer screen is the hardest part until I start to actually type in or write down some points on a piece of paper to say, this is what the judges have asked for. These are the questions we need to answer, the goals we need to reach. Make sure all your areas are really covered, and then work on with your team, refining it, putting in all the information, making sure that it's powerful, compelling, and just make it easy for the judges to applaud what you are putting forward. So the good news is you're not starting from scratch. As a finalist, you already know that your mission and content have merit and are meeting what the judges are looking for. So you can start to build on what you have already submitted and continue what was successful, so that you're just telling your story as a continuation of what you've already proposed. Again, you're going to want to demonstrate what you accomplished in phase 1. This is what the judges will be looking for. You want to show how the awarded funds from phase 1 have been put to use, and that the funds were optimized for the greatest benefit. So really lay out what you've accomplished and how you did it in the phase 2 proposal. And that's where you move on to phase 2. So the focus on phase 2 is to lay out your creative, your innovative solutions, how your solutions differ from what may have been done in the past in these areas and may be occurring in your community already. The judges are looking for innovative approaches. And so you really want to highlight what you're doing that's different or fresh or expected to have new results and better results from what may have been done in the past. Some of you may have gotten some feedback from the judges from phase 1. If you did, it's great to have that and to take that to heart. It helps you know what to emphasize, what to revise, what to do differently. If there were some questions where they were asking for more clarification or more support, you'll know that and you're able to build that into your phase 2. It's important oftentimes in challenges like this to show that you can take constructive input and use that input to improve your plan and your results in your community. And this is one of those points that probably is obvious, but bears restating, and that is to follow the instructions exactly. We all know those sad stories of people who, if they're submitting, say, a written proposal, it's supposed to be in at 5 o'clock and it gets there at 5:01 and they get disqualified, which seems, you know, a little heartbreaking. But everybody has the chance to make sure that they're not overlooking anything in the rules, and so they're not opening them up for the possibility of a negative result. So really be careful with the rules. Sometimes it's hard to find in all the masses of information that you've gotten exactly where those rules are. So we pulled out some of them here for you. It's easy to go through and just do a checklist of what the judges are asking you to do, and if in fact you're doing that. We wanted to just make a note also, relevant to point 2, sometimes you're using language in your presentation that you may have a clear definition of in your mind, but it may differ between teams. It may differ between the judges' understanding of what certain terms are. So as you go through, think about if you need to give a specific definition of any of the terms that are being used. This is one that often comes up. If disadvantaged communities means one thing to you and something else to the people who are reading your submissions, you may get a little disconnect. So where there are places where you can carefully define the terms that you are addressing, it's good to do that. So rules are here. If you are able to keep a copy of this, it's an easy reference to find a way to go back to them. So along with the rules, you really want to make sure that you're following the stated goals, the overall goals, of course, and then it's really helpful to look at the live pitch scoring criteria, which is in your original document. And it lays out there really clearly what the judges will be rating you on and the range of scoring for each measure. So look at those and you can build your presentation with that scoring criteria in mind. And of course, what they've said is, they're really looking for how you implement the plan, how you achieve one or more goals of the prize, and then identify the future work that the additional funding can support. And again, just to make it handy, we've put the stated goals here in this document so that they're easy to find. You don't have to necessarily address each one of the goals, but as they say in the rules, a couple, 3, make sure you're on track with giving them what they're looking for. And then one other thing to keep in mind is that along with your 20-minute live presentation, there'll be a following 10-minute question period. And it's always a little bit of a struggle. You hope that you've answered all the questions in the presentation itself, but you may be saying, should I put this in? Should I say more about this? Should I leave this out? And if you sort of keep those edits that you've made in mind, should they come up in the questions, you'll already be prepared if you anticipate what some of those questions might be from the judges, so that in that extra 10-minute period of time, you'll also be able to address any questions that the judges have. So keep that on a bit of a back burner. Are you getting red circles on the screen? No? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, there is a red circle on the screen.
I'm not sure where they popped up from. They're not mine, so you may ignore those.
Somebody's pen work.
I think so. Someone is emphasizing certain areas. So the presentation style, you've sat down, you've put together your content. The question is, how do I serve this up to the judges in a way that's going to be really compelling? The points we're going to talk about now apply to your live presentation. Some of them may also apply to your written presentation as you go through that as well. I think what's key to keep in mind here is that the people who are going to be seeing your live presentation see a lot of presentations, both with this challenge and with other challenges that they might be part of. So again, it's key to really engage the judges with your live presentation, engage them in your story, make sure that you're making the story appealing, understandable, and important to them. One of the most effective ways to do that is to be a storyteller and to tell the story of the needs in your community, the people in your community, the way you address those needs, and really authentically represent who your team and your community are. And this gets back a little bit to what I mentioned earlier, is what is the tone and the personality of your presentation? What's authentically you? So sometimes we see with presentations, we have a lot of engineers or a lot of scientists perhaps who are doing a live presentation, and they're maybe not naturally easy and maybe amusing with their presentation, but they try to be, and it doesn't always come off as well as it might have been if they had just sort of stuck to who they were as people and who they are in terms of solving the problems in their community. So find a voice that you're really comfortable with, because you're going to be spending 20 minutes in that voice, and you want it to feel real and you want it to be authentic. Don't be afraid of showing some emotion, the emotional aspects of your story. You do want to develop empathy towards the problem you're addressing. Important to emphasize the hope that you're bringing through your presentation versus the hopelessness that we all sometimes feel in trying to have an impact in our communities, but focus on the upside and the positive of what you're going to be able to accomplish. And part of the way to do that is to tell the really human story, real life stories of the people with their real needs and your potential results through the work that you're doing in the community. It's also easy sometimes when we're dealing with the sorts of projects that are part of this competition. Sometimes it's very frustrating trying to solve problems in a community, and it's easy to let that frustration and even anger come through in a presentation. But you want to take that and turn it into not anger or frustration, but persuasion, by offering viable solutions, by giving a call to action that you're offering for your community, and to allow the judges to feel really invested in a partnership with you and with your community. The rational support is critical. It's easy to get in and start to tell a story that pulls at the heartstrings, but that alone isn't going to get the check signed. So you want to be sure to have rational support for everything that you're offering, even though you may offer it initially in a more emotional storytelling way. And importantly, you want to engender trust. The judges have a big responsibility in awarding a fair amount of money, and you want to make sure that they understand how and why your team can be trusted with the funding. You want them to trust in the process that you've developed for reaching your goals. And you also want to demonstrate that you have the trust of your community and your partners, the people that you're working with. sometimes we get asked about changes that may have been made since phase one of a competition. And it's quite a long period of time between your phase one and your phase two. A lot of things can happen in a year. So you may have experienced and encountered some roadblocks over the last few months versus what you had in your phase one proposal. There may have been new learning, new experiences that just caused you to alter your plan. And that's okay. It's okay to say in this presentation, something changed in the way that we are approaching our project. Maybe the local environment changed. Maybe somebody on your team who was key has moved away. Or maybe you've just in the process of executing against your phase one plan have found that there's a different path that's going to be more effective. So you can talk about those, you can own those changes, and it's really a positive to show that you've been open to switching gears when it's necessary to improve the outcome of your program. So this can be an area that's an important part of your presentation if in fact this is what you experienced. Another way to really build the trust is to use third parties so that the judges don't have to take your word for how well everything is going and what you're going to be able to accomplish. So testimonials from people that you've interacted with can be very effective, particularly in your video presentation. If you can show in the video people actually at work, working on different parts of your project, that can be very effective. Allow the individuals, the partners, other community members who are impacted by what you accomplished in phase one, allow them to be a bit of a star in your presentation as well. And this again can lay the groundwork for what you're going to be doing in phase two. Something that is occasionally a little bit hard to build into your presentation is keeping it really focused on the audience versus coming from the speaker's point of view solely. So your projects are all ones that you feel passionate, you're excited about. You have certain goals that are important to you and your team and your community. And that's important to convey. It's also important to convey how your motivations apply to the audience that you're talking to and how it affects them. So not necessarily in terms of how it affects them personally, but what in the context of the goals of the challenge, how your motivations fit the goals of the challenge. So the judges are there, they have criteria, they have a job to do. The easier you can make it for them to do that job, the more positive they will look at your submission. So make sure you're hitting all of those deliverables. The judges will be looking at what you're promising. That's their responsibility to make sure that there's a confidence that what you're saying you will deliver, you will be able to deliver. And so demonstrate evidence from what you did in phase one and how you plan to deliver on phase two. Let them have that information so that they're really confident in what you're going to be able to deliver in phase two. Some of you may have seen a previous presentation. It was the Brink Design Group that talked about inspiring action. And in their case, they were talking about inspiring action among the community. How do you get people to volunteer? How do you get people to come along with you on fulfilling the goals of your project, which is critical. It's also critical in this phase when the action that you're trying to inspire is to have the judges say, that's great. Of course, we need to fund this effort. Take away any objections that you can hear in your head or people have told you to your project. Take those all away so that it's really easy for the judges to take the desired action of saying to you, we're going to help you continue your work with, with additional funding. And then finally, a great place to get some motivation and some ideas for your presentation is with TED Talks. And I'm sure everybody has spent a fair amount of time looking at different TED Talks. We've pulled out 3 here that really apply to this presentation in particular. So you may want to go out and grab these and spend a little time listening to them. The first one, the best stats you've ever seen. This speaker is Hans Rosling. And he often gives talks that include a lot of facts and figures. The facts and figures are important in your presentation, but as he points out, finding an engaging way to provide those facts and figures is really critical to having people engage with you and to really understand what it is you're trying to get across. So as he says, having the data is not enough. I have to show it in ways people enjoy and understand. In some ways, if you can make them absorb all the facts and figures without feeling like it's hard work for them, it sinks in a little bit better and gets them a little bit more motivated. The third one that you might enjoy is called A History of Our World in 18 Minutes, which is a pretty stunning declaration. How do you condense the history of the world into 18 minutes? You're going to be condensing the history of your project in 20 minutes. So it's maybe a little comparable in some ways. But what this speaker, David Christian, talks about is to really focus on the central core elements that are persuasive. And persuasive is the key word there. There are always lots of things you want to talk about. Think in your mind about what are the things that are persuasive. And anything that's not critical to how you tell your story, just peel it away and really focus on what needs to be told. And the third speaker we have here, and you may have seen him, he speaks quite a lot. He talks about how leaders inspire others to take actions with a really simple question, which is why. And I can tell you, coming from the marketing world, oftentimes when you're out talking about a company or a product, you don't start with the why so much, you start with the what. Here's what we do. You kind of work backwards from the way he's laid it out. Here's how we do it, and here's why we do it. And if you can flip that around successfully, he gives Apple as an example, you can pull people in and really make them part of your presentation by first talking about the why. Why are you doing the things that you're doing in this particular proposal? And then talk about how you're going to do it, and then talk about what specifically you're going to do. What are the steps that you take very specifically? So these are 3 that I think would be really helpful if you have time to go out and look at these. They each take a different approach to making a presentation really compelling and making it a presentation that will allow people to become your partner in what you're proposing to do. As Amanda had said at the top of this presentation, we're going to be available to work with each of you in small group sessions, and you're going to be getting much more information about that from Amanda. But first of all, are there any questions I can answer? Any areas that you'd like to have more conversation on?
This is Vaidi with the Tabona Foundation. I do have a question.
Sure.
Will the live pitches, will they be in a room? Is it on a stage? Would we be able to have like a PowerPoint presentation, or are we able to have notes with us?
The comfort of notes.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
I can
Amanda?
help share a little bit about that. And the prize team at NREL is working on getting all those details outlined for everyone, and that will be shared in more detail with like the logistical questions on March 20th. If you have gotten an email, you should have gotten an email with the calendar invite that will be a live pitch webinar on March 20th. From what I understand, yes, it will be on a stage with a screen with the ability to do PowerPoints and notes and whatever's comfortable, especially from what we've seen in past pitch competitions. That's pretty standard with a microphone and such. So I'm sure that they'll be able to give you the exact details of what that will look like when you meet with them on March 20th.
And then if you
I'm sorry we didn't have that today.
Yeah, just sort of put yourself in the same situation wherever you're from, and just practice, as they say.
And then Susan, we'll get a copy of this, correct?
Yes, it will be made available for sure. Yeah.
I got a question. Who should be on this pitch team?
From your team?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, what I usually suggest is having the people who are most comfortable speaking really lead it, and those who have, the full information. I know on teams, sometimes people do one part and other people do another part of the actual work. You usually don't want too many people. One or two is usually sufficient, because then the judges can really focus on just a couple of people. And it really just depends team by team who's most comfortable doing a presentation of this type.
There was also a question in the chat about will we receive more details regarding what's expected on our reports. And if you saw early on, there is some specific guidelines that are listed on HeroX. And I think they also got emailed out to you yesterday. They had not included updated dates and stuff, but they do now. And so you can go through those guidelines, and in there's a scoring rubric, and that's really what you want to follow both for your report and your live pitch. Susan touched on those points early on in the presentation, but and it's something that we'll go over in our small groups, is that you really want to, there's some specific questions in there, and you want to make sure that you are answering those questions both in your report and then as well in your live pitch. And we always give the recommendation that you find outside support in reviewing those, and that can be a power connector or someone else that's within your team or connector, that you share that rubric with somebody and ask them to review your materials and ask them if they were able to gather that information from what you presented, and where were you missing areas. And when we meet in our small groups, we'll be doing that. We'll have that rubric in front of us, and we'll be giving you feedback based on that. Thanks, Clara.
Did many of you get feedback from your first submission from the judges? I've seen some heads shaking here. Yeah, I know it was, some people did and some people didn't, but again, that's a really good window into how to build this presentation, because it tells you really what the judges are looking for as well.
I have another question. Is there going to be a question and answer time from the judges, or will they stop in our presentation to ask questions or to give more information, kind of thing?
Yeah, Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that they probably hold their questions and comments until the 10-minute period after your presentation. So you should be able to get through your whole presentation and then be prepared for questions.
Yeah, and usually these pitch sessions are very well structured on time. So typically, whether you're doing a video pitch or whether you're doing a live pitch, you have to stick to that time limit. So if you are, beyond your time at 20 minutes, you'll typically be cut off, and then you'll have 10 minutes of question that again will end at promptly 10 minutes.
So our presentation is 10 minutes, 10 minutes of question and answer, or in our 10-minute presentation is a 3-minute video. So our presentation is 7 minutes.
Your presentation from start to finish should be 20 minutes. Within that 20 minutes, you can have up to 3 minutes of video. So that means, you can, present your slides and then either, break that up, or you do a minute. We're suggesting you use that 3 minutes for testimonials. So you may want to break that up and use that in portions, or if you have a compelling full 3-minute video, you can play that all at once. But that will all be wrapped in from start to finish of 20 minutes.
And is the question and answer time a part of that 20 minutes?
So after your 20 minutes is over, then your 10-minute question and answer session will begin after that. So you will be there for 30 minutes total, 20 minutes presenting, 10 minutes of questions and answers.
And on the video, you'll see in the materials that the judges make a point of saying, or the rules make a point of saying, that they're not going to judge you on sort of if you have high production values in the video. They're really going to be looking at the content. So you don't have to worry so much if you have the best camera and the best lighting or the smoothest editing, so much as they just want to get a real impression of what you delivered and some of the people you've worked with and some of the success that you've had so far. So if you can really put your attention on the content of the video, and yes, you want it to look nice, but it doesn't have to be, Hollywood style video presentation in this case.
Isn't there a 5-minute video that we also have to do for the application? And should this video be edited from that or separate, or are there no rules regarding that?
I am looking right now, but again, I think that some of those logistical questions might be able to be answered in the March 20th meeting. I know that they were just kind of rolling out some of these details, and like I said, the new guidelines just came out, but it looks like at this point you need to submit at the time of your submission the cover page, the summary document, your live pitch event participation, and your IEI report. So I don't see that 5-minute video in here, but I'm sorry, yes. So that video, the link to your 5-minute online video will be included in your submission on May 24th. So that should be separate from your live pitch. Now you could use elements of that in your pitch and cut it back to 3 minutes, or use pieces of it. But your 5-minute online video needs to be part of your May 24th submission.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Emily. I'm reviewing these as well.
Hi, I have a quick question concerning about the timing of the 20 minutes. Are we supposed to keep track of the 20-minute timer, or is there going to be a 20-minute timer we can use as a reference? And if not, then can we have someone be logistical support to help keep us track of the time?
Typically there is a clock that gives you those countdowns, but I'll note that in our suggestions to the NREL team and ask them to give some details on that in the March 20th call. But I would hope that they would have something like that available for you. Typically there's a clock in front of you, but I'll make sure that's clarified on March 20th.
Anything else we can answer for you or have a discussion about at this point?
For the prize for the 6 teams that receive the prize, in the email that I just I just saw this morning. Is it cut in half, the amount of the prize?
In terms of how
So,
it's distributed among, yeah. Go ahead, Amanda. Sure.
Yeah, I'm not completely certain. It looks like, but it says, you know, that the prize, typically they have a certain amount, a total amount, and then they divide it amongst those that they choose. So it depends on how many winners they select. Typically they say up to so many winners. So it says up to 6 winners can win 1.5 million. So that's divided between up to 6 people. They may choose 4 or 5, but they won't choose more than a maximum of 6.
Okay, great. Any other questions we can answer? As you mull over this and have a chance to look at it and start to work on your presentations, keep in mind you'll be getting the information about the small group sessions. We will be happy to hear your pitches at various stages and give you comments. Or if you have areas that are kind of sticking points for you, you know, we can help you address those as well. So we're here to support this effort for you, and hopefully we'll be seeing all of you as we get these small groups scheduled as well.